Bismillahirrahmanirrahim and Assalamu alaikum. Active passive voice series day 20. Students, today I am going to explain you the passive voice of modal verbs. Students, modal verbs can be used in the passive voice to express different meanings and shades of obligation, permission, ability and possibility. Modal verbs can be used in the passive voice to express different meanings and shades of obligation, permission, ability and possibility. Students, you have to remember that when using modal verbs in the passive voice, the main verb is always in the past participle. Past participle is using third form of the verb. The choice of modal verbs depends on the intended meaning and context of the sentence. So now I will show you the modal verbs in active and passive both. As you can see, can, could, may, might, must, etc. These all are the modal verbs. In active voice and how we will convert them in passive voice. Can will be changed into can be, could will be changed into could be, may will be changed into may be, might will be changed into might be, must will be changed into must be, would will be changed into would be, should will be changed into should be, will be changed into will be, should have into should have been, could have into could have been, might have into might have been, may have into may have been, must have into must have been, and so on. Okay, students, I'm explaining you active passive voice. Active voice and passive voice are two different ways of constructing sentences based on the relationship between the subject and the object of the verb. In active voice, the subject of the sentence performs the action expressed by the verb and the object receives that action. As far as passive voice is concerned, in passive voice, the subject of the sentence receives the action expressed by the verb and the object becomes the focus of the sentence. Students, in passive voice, the emphasis is on the action rather than the doer of the action. It is often used when the doer of the action is unknown, unimportant, or when the speaker or writer wants to shift the focus of the recipients of the action. Now I will show you modal verbs, how to convert modal verbs into passive voice with the help of examples. Students, as you can see, they must do it. They must do it. So you have to keep in mind some rules. Subject will take the place of object and object will come in the place of subject in passive voice. Okay, we will always use past participle, and with modals we use be. Okay, for example, must, so we will use must be. Should be. If should have is there, then should have been, could have been. Okay, use of by will be there. For example, they must do it. It must be done by them. And pronoun changes will be there. For example, I will be changed into me, she will be changed into her, he will be changed into him, and we will be changed into us. You, it, and nouns will not change. Okay, they must do it. It must be done by them. What I have done in this, I have changed the subject into object and object into subject. As you can see, I have used must be. Okay, I have used by and I have used third form of the verb. Do is the first form of the verb. I have changed it into third form. Done is the third form. Okay. Next example is he should leave the place. He should leave the place. He is the subject. Okay. Subject will take the place of object. Okay. And object, the place is object. So object will come in the place of subject, as you can see. Should is there. So we will use should be in passive, and leave is the first form of the verb. So I have changed it into third form. So I will use left. Okay. The place should be left by him. I have changed he into him. All right. Next example is we could hear the voices. We could hear the voices. The voices could be heard by us. We has changed into us. Subject, we is our subject. So subject has taken the place of object, and object has come in the place of subject. Okay. And instead of could, I have used could be in the passive. And here is the first form, and heard is the third form. Use of by, you can see. The voices could be heard by us. All right. Next example is he can drive a car. He can drive a car. A car can be driven by him. A car can be driven by him. As you can see, he is changed into him, and drive is first form, driven is the third form. Okay. And can is changed into can be. Next example is Sana may leave the room. The room may be left by Sana. The room may be left by Sana. Okay. Next example is we might call her. We might call her. She, her I have changed into she now because it's subject. She might be called by us. I have changed we into us, and call is the first form. Now I have changed it into third form. She might be called by us. Okay. Next example is Ali would pluck the flowers. The flowers would be plucked by Ali. You will break the glass. You will break the glass. The glass will be broken by you. Break is the first form and broken is the third form. As you know, in passive voice we use third form of the verb. Okay. And you, as I have told you, you will remain the same. We will not change the you. Okay. The glass will be broken by you. Next example is you should have helped her. You should have helped her. Helped her, as you can see, should have is used. So as I have told you earlier, should have will be changed into should have been. Could have been, should have been, would have been, might have been, and so on. So you should have helped her. She should have been helped by you. Okay. Next example is I could have slapped him. I could have slapped him. How I have changed it into passive? He could have been slapped by me. He could have been slapped by me. Next example is he would have purchased a car. He would have purchased a car. As you know, he will be changed into him. Would have will be changed into would have been. Purchased is already, you know, in could have, should have, would have. I have already used third form because third form will be used. Okay. And in passive voice, you know, we will use third form of the verb in active as well as in passive. Okay. If we are using should have, could have, would have, may have, might have, etc. Okay. So he would have purchased a car would have been purchased by him. All right. Next example is, he might have broken a chair. He might have broken a chair. A chair might have been broken by him. I have changed he into him. Might have is changed into might have been. Okay. A chair might have been broken by him. Next example is, they may have given a book. They may have given a book. A book may have been given by him. I have changed they into them. May have is changed into may have been. Given already third form is used, so in passive voice we will use past participle. Next example is, your mother must have cooked rice. Your mother must have cooked rice. So how I have changed this into passive? Rice must have been cooked by your mother. Alright? As you can see, subject has taken the place of object as object, and object has taken the place of the subject. Okay? Must have is changed into must have been. Next example is, we ought to have respected those people. We ought to have respected those people. How I have converted it into passive? Those people ought to have been respected by us. Those people ought to have been respected by us. I have changed we into us, as you can see, and ought to have been. Okay, ought to have is changed into ought to have been. Okay, and third form of verb is used in active and passive both. All right. Next example is, your father must have scolded you. You must have been scolded by your father. All right. Last example, we ought to respect our elders. We ought to respect our elders. So how I have converted it into passive? Our elders ought to be. Our elders ought to be respected by us. So what you have learnt in today's lesson, how we will convert modal verbs into passive voice. So modal verbs, can will be changed into can be, could into could be, may into may be, and so on. And would have into would have been, should have into should have been, may have into may have been, might have been, and so on. Okay. So students, now you know we will convert the modal verbs into passive voice, and what are modal verbs and how we will use them and why we will use them, where we will use them. Modal verbs can be used in the passive voice to express different meanings and shades of obligation, permission, ability, and possibility. All right. I hope you will like this lecture, and in my next lecture I will explain you how we will convert interrogative form, interrogative sentences into passive voice. Okay. I hope you will like this lecture. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.